My city's doing great. I have several casinos, and they're all filled with tourists. You can see them walking up and down the streets, looking for places to gamble.
Okay, next up, betas, or betas as I like to call them. There's been a couple of them this week from EA over Origin. SimCity was released over the weekend, and that lasted like that. And then the Crysis 3 multiplayer demo, beta, whatever you want to call it. And Nick has joined us, lead intern, executive intern.
Say hi to the people.
Hello, everyone.
Nice. Listen to that voice.
I know, that voice just oozes creamy goodness.
Brandon Jones is nervous.
Oozes creamy goodness. All right.
Nick will be joining us to talk about Crysis 3. But first of all, I actually played SimCity beta for a limited amount of time over the weekend.
It was an hour, right? You could get an hour into your city.
You went an hour into your city, and it was only up for the weekend.
It's like a demo beta.
All right. Disasters.
Yes.
Can you type
disasters?
funds?
How can you destroy stuff?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't get I saw a disaster in the tutorial because that's the thing. You get an hour, but then I hadn't been into SimCity in such a long time. I wanted to play the tutorial and really get a feel for it. And I saw a neighboring city taken out by meteors. And there is a disaster button there that was grayed out.
So you did the tutorial?
I did the tutorial.
How accessible is it? Because I know like when I played SimCity 1, that like I was like 8, right? And that game was easy. And then like I felt like the games got a little more and more intimidating.
I gotta say,
but this looks like it's kind of easy to jump into.
That was my main fear because some of the last iterations you feel like you need a PhD in town planning. No, it's very easy to get into. I mean, the tutorial really takes you through everything in a nice, easy kind of way. It does feel a smidge Simish. You know, the
well,
Sims.
it's the zooming into the characters,
yeah,
right?
I mean, even just the way they interact with you. I mean, it just has that little feel of The Sims, which brings me out in a cold sweat. But apart from that, I mean, the tutorial's great. You get to create your own little town. It's right there. You know, you can basically play through the tutorial and then it lets you create your own town.
And it's really roads based now, right? Instead of like zoning based, like the roads come first.
Well, the roads come first, but the zones are obviously key with regards to how you go from residential to commercial to industrial. And putting the industrial zones right in the middle of a residential area is not going to want people to buy, you know, and move into your city.
I mean, are you gonna pre-order? Are you gonna get it?
I'm going to get it.
Yeah, I think it looks really good, like the curved roads and all that stuff.
Yeah, the curved roads, the connections to the rails, to the rails to increase stuff. The fact that you can put like a wind power station in there, but if you want to be really healthy, but a wind power station, you're going to need to buy 3 or 4 of them to power a small-sized town. I mean, I've actually been playing SimCity on Facebook recently, just to
The
Facebook.
Sean Parker got rid of that.
Yeah, just to get really back into it, and I gotta say, yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a beautiful looking game again on my PC.
Do you think that tilt shift look works?
I think it
kind
does.
Of the toy thing.
It's so easy, but it's so easy to get into. I mean, it's one of those things.
No, I think it looks cool, but I was curious after like playing for an hour if it kind of wears thin or.
Well, for the first couple of minutes, are you talking about just the
kind of how they look, that weird toy look?
Well,
what's going on?
You know, you can zoom in and zoom out, and you can tilt the camera angle however you want. The one thing that did kind of sort of like get me going initially was if I wanted to move, I had to swipe. And of course, being on an iPad or an iPhone, I'm used to swiping in one direction and stuff going the opposite way, if you will. But not on this one. So I've got to go like this to go that way, and like this to go that way, as opposed to just swiping. That was the only bugbear I had.
Are you going to buy the Ultimate Edition so you can get your colloquial French and German and British towns as a UKer?
I have to look up to see if they've got any Welsh towns in there, because I am more than happy to redesign Swansea from the ground up.
Nice.
So yes.
Really quick, I'll just say I hate weekend betas.
Yeah.
It's really, really annoying for us for capturing. Well, we couldn't capture for this anyway, so annoying as well.
Yes,
since it was open, somewhat open.
It was ridiculous. And well, you needed the key from pre-ordering, but yeah, I'm gonna get it. Now, Nick, you and I have played the Crysis 3 multiplayer beta.
We have.
What format did you play?
I played on Xbox with Justin, and I saw Patrick playing PC.
Okay, so I played predominantly on PC, but I did download the Xbox version as well to take a look. And I gotta say, the Xbox version looks really good.
Yeah.
It looks a little turdy.
I mean, like
it's no PC, but
yeah, I saw it before the PC, and then I saw the PC. I'm like, wow, my opinion just kind of changed a little bit. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. So let's talk about hunter mode.
Yes.
Because I gotta say, I mean, I'm not a big multiplayer gamer anymore because of the quality of matchmaking and how it's kind of regressed, in my opinion. hunter mode's a buttload of fun, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm digging it. I mean, just even if you're not playing as the hunter, which is obviously the guy in the cloak suit, and you have the bow and arrow, if you're playing as the Cell, just that level of tension in a multiplayer game where you just have to look for the distortion and again on the PC, the little ripples in the water as somebody's moving through it. I mean, I got owned regularly before I really got used to playing it, but I just had such a blast with that. It made me smile.
Yeah, it's very similar to kind of infected modes that you see in like Halo 4, where there's the two cloaked guys, and then as they kill, you start changing. So it does have that really good tension, but it has a kind of a tactical feel that isn't very common in these infected type modes, because you're kind of, you want to stick together, but you want everyone to look you give everyone a direction to look, you move together, trying to figure out where these people are, and then as you get picked off if you stray away and you're getting picked off one at a time, your group's getting smaller and their group's getting bigger, and you're seeing these ripples everywhere, and it's really get your blood pumping. It's
definitely smart to stay in the team environment, and preferably in the middle of a team, so as people start dying, you can run the other way.
Yeah, I was kind of, when I saw it at E3, I was kind of hoping, or I don't know where they debuted Hunter, but when I saw it, I was kind of hoping it wouldn't have that infected twist where people turned. I was hoping it might just stick with the two and be kind of more like a team deathmatch type thing, because I feel like the balance might kind of get jacked. I mean, that is the point, definitely, but
I think it goes back to tactics, though. I think it encourages team play. It encourages, and
Yeah.
I think this is where you'll get lots more squads, guilds, whatever, forming, and people will play as a unit. They will communicate over voice, and they'll talk to each other. And then when you do switch to Hunter, though, that bow is...
Oh yeah, I mean, I got it in a Crash Site. I played with it a couple times in Crash Site. I mean, it's one hit kill, like hit him in the ankle.
Yeah.
One hit kill, like it's brutal.
And then, I mean, they're teasering the other, the incendiary bow.
Yeah.
Teasering.
Teasering.
Well, there was a
Tasering.
teaser before the
that's
actual
good, I like
beta
that.
starts. But I mean, the incendiary bow,
Yeah.
that looks really good. And I gotta say, it's way more fun than the Boeing Far Cry 3, which I liked, but took so much time to really get into. But it's actually very easy to use in Crisis.
Yeah, I think asymmetrical modes are always fun, and it is always a kind of a weird question of balance.
Yeah.
If you guys I feel like kind of I'm probably completely wrong here, but to me the kind of the grandfather of this is Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow with the Mercs versus the Spies,
versus Spies,
where it's
yeah.
first person versus third person, and that game was so much fun to play like the first month, but once everyone kind of figured out all like the exploits, it became really lopsided, which is a problem.
Was that Pandora Tomorrow, or was it Chaos Theory?
It was the second one. It was Pandora.
It was? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, the third one added co-op.
Right.
But it's funny because as those games got re-released, like that asymmetric mode happened, but they got more and more balanced, which did make it more fair, but maybe a little less fun for that first kind of initial period. There's that weird rub with balance. Like I was playing the Gears of War beta, the Overrun, where it's totally lopsided that the Horde's going to win eventually. Unless you suck like we did when we were playing the beta testers. But it is an interesting kind of phenomenon where balance, I think, has to even be put on kind of a new pedestal and kind of thought about in a different way for making these game modes work, where maybe a side is bound to lose. I mean, in this Hunters mode, you lose eventually, right? You can't, or can you kill the Hunters?
No, you could kill the Hunters. I mean, and that's.
Do
I
the
would say
Hunters
that
die permanently? Because when I played, we just got smashed.
Well, I was lucky with the few games I dropped into then that I think we won half of them.
Really?
With Sal, but I mean, it was a case of sticking into a group, or if you were going to pair off, there was still two of you in a group, and you were sort of watching each other's backs. The Hunters can die, and they
can be killed.
They die.
Respawn?
And they respawn.
Oh.
I think they respawn.
I think they respawn. Yeah.
So it is
yes, they-
eventually-
I
yes,
think
they-
it's like a survive the time kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's a total countdown. But you are, as a Cell guy, I mean, you do have more weapons at your disposal. You do have your primary, your secondary, and your grenade or whatever, the EMP grenade, which obviously can diffuse stuff. So I got in a good few kills on the Hunters just by finding a spot, having somebody with me, and just sort of like keeping an eye out for those, that predator movement style, if you will. And I gotta say, it was really well balanced. It's the maps are key to this, because always, people are gonna find an exploit in a map. And the two maps I played, there's the airport and the old library, and both of them really worked very well. Not many hidey holes, just a couple of spots to really sort of like get nested in if you're lucky.
Yeah, Crisis has always seemed to have in the multiplayer have a big focus on like verticality. You know, it's a lot of up and down. You're using that power jump to get onto ledges. A lot of like
the power jump, the power smash. I mean, just even
coming down and crushing people.
Yeah, and the airplane doing the air stomp on top of a hunter that's moving, looking around for you. That's actually really satisfying.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh. And then the slide and everything. So
Can I ask one more question about this beta? Can you play it for more than an hour?
all right. Final topic for this week. Turn-based strategy is getting a resurgence. I mean, XCOM, obviously, Game of the Year last year for a lot of people.
Including GameTrailers.
Including GameTrailers, this very site. And this week we've seen 2 games come out. We've got Skulls of the Shogun across PC, Xbox 360, and Surface, I think.
And Windows Phone.
And Windows Phone. Okay, so it's a quadruple threat for those of you with a Windows Phone. And then we have Fire Emblem as well on I think it's the 3DS, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, and we got Patrick joining us.
And of course, yes, Patrick Morales is in the house. And Patrick, we'll start with you. Skulls of the Shogun. I downloaded it on XBLA on Wednesday, and I started to play it. I mean, I've made no bones about how much I enjoyed XCOM, and I like going back to it, and even though I kind of suck at it. This one is kind of different for me. It really didn't suck me in from the get-go.
No?
But I've seen lots of good things about it, and it's certainly a bold thing to do for a $14.99 XBLA game to bring this turn-based strategy. I'm gonna say the art style is phenomenal. I love the art style.
Really
it's
cool.
hysterical.
Yeah, the guy that worked on it, Jake Kasdal, he's an ex-Sega guy. He worked on Rez. He's done a lot of art stuff over the years. And yeah, this was his baby. He basically came up with the whole idea, the design, the story, and yeah, even the art style. Like, that's all him.
Now, obviously, I didn't get a chance to play multiplayer either because it's across all 4 formats. You can play multiplayer with anybody on any of the other systems. Is that right?
Yeah, they have a lot of options in terms of how you want to play. You can play from your Xbox Live arcade account and then play with someone on the Surface. You could do turn by mail like style thing, asynchronous play. Yeah, so it's fully loaded, but unfortunately, if you want to play it on the PC, it has to be Windows 8. So
Yeah,
that's the big caveat
It's the
there.
rub, right?
Yeah.
With one hand they giveth, and the other hand they flip you off.
I would say though, from watching you play it, I haven't had a chance to dabble in it. The kind of the radius ring.
Yeah.
Like I know it reminded me of your favorite game, one of your favorite games. It kind of reminded me a bit of Valkyria.
A little bit.
It's a little bit like Valkyria. It's actually the one game I've seen that's more like it is Ark the Lad, Twilight of the Spirits. Actually had that kind of.
Okay.
It reminded me of that. Like you had the circle radius where you can move anywhere within it. It really harkened back to that. I mean, I'm not sure if that was the first game to even do it, but the play style felt very similar to that.
Yeah,
and
and
I like that kind of like.
I think it's a good way. Like I know Miguel loves his hexes, right? But
Going
It
away
abstracts
from
the
going away
idea.
from grid based. It's like comparing it to Fire Emblem, from grid based game to like this where you have more free roaming within a range. Like it changes up the dynamics quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, and
it feels open.
I think
Yeah.
it's very telling, too, of the kind of approach that they wanted to take for this game. Obviously, turn-based strategy games have not really been en vogue for a while. But here they're making a lot of little choices, be it with the art, the mechanics, the way that the units play out, that are kind of simplified, a very distilled version of that game. And it comes across as a very approachable, like easy to pick up, easy to play, very charming, endearing game, and I totally dug it.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, like turn-based games have been on PC. Like some of the people talk about the rise of the indie game, but there's been so many of these armchair general games forever on PC. But it's kind of funny because Mike, you did Fire Emblem, and that was the game, traditionally Nintendo was afraid, like going back 20 plus years, that was the game Nintendo was afraid to bring out in the States.
Yeah.
And now it's like an Advanced Wars was a surprise hit on the GBA. The Famicom Wars never came out over here and stuff.
Which was
and now
a big inspiration for Skulls.
Right, yeah, no, I remember you mentioning that. But it's kind of funny now that like in 1 week with the rise of XCOM, we are getting these games that are being really well received and hopefully will sell.
And to be fair, I'd say like Fire Emblem series has not been consistent in coming out in the US. We did get Shadow Dragon for DS back in 2009, 2010, a few years ago, but then we didn't get the follow-up, the other DS remake of one of the original ones. That never came out here. And then this one, I think it was just recently revealed that Nintendo brought in an outside studio, 8-4, to help with the localization of the game. It makes me wonder if they hadn't been brought on if Nintendo was going to even bring this game out in Western territories. But I think it's a good decision they did.
Well, they made this limited edition.
Yeah, I mean, they did go all
3DS.
in. Once they decided, they did go all in with it. With that, and it's a very good game. And I don't understand why they don't keep bringing these games out. The market there for the people who are into that game are always going to buy it. There's always a demand there for that game. It's just Nintendo has to be smart enough with how they market it and how much they put out. But the one thing playing Fire Emblem and then getting to play multiplayer of Skulls of the Shogun with Patrick, I'll say this: my biggest knock against the new Fire Emblem is the lack of competitive multiplayer. There's a whole lot of like arguments about why it should be done. It involves like balance and like apparently there's a lot of issues with balancing the game, and like there's so many different classes in there, and there's so many abilities that make it almost broken. And people trying to argue you should be familiar with a term called the random number generator, RNG. Like that is the bread and butter of like Fire Emblem's like back end and stuff. Like it makes or breaks everything. But playing Skulls of the Shogun, if Fire Emblem is ever gonna look into a way to maybe do multiplayer and like change it up, how fun it was to play like Skulls of the Shogun with the dynamics they put in there. Just the way that like pairing your units together, like Fire Emblem kind of already does that with like the enhanced attacks, like the buffs you give to each other, but like you couldn't break walls and stuff, and then like knocking people off edges, like they do. There's things like they added more to the actual environment to counteract like any broken mechanics that could be arise from the classes or whatever, which seems to be Fire Emblem's problem. Like Fire Emblem should do more with the environments and do like more pits, perils, and stuff like that to maybe throw a wrench in that works, and that kind of evens it out. But
That's another thing I like about Skulls of the Shogun. It kind of relegates all of the minutia and, headwork into all this turn-based stuff on a visual level. So even though, it's not taking place on the grid, even though there's not a whole lot of math to take care of, as long as you can register visually that, okay, if I group these guys in front of my archers, then they'll protect my guys from harm. Like, all that stuff kind of registers on a very, immediately apparent level. That's really cool.
It is very well designed by the way they do communicate stuff across. And when I said, it's not really my cup of tea, I don't think it's the game type necessarily. I think it's just perhaps the subject matter is perhaps not a huge thing for me, whereas, because XCOM is something that I really enjoyed and I really got into, but I can see what they've done here. They've not dumbed it down, they've simplified it, they've made it accessible. You can see your unit's strength and, for defense and attack, and how you do the soul wall to start off, and you can use certain attacks. They'll flash white to push people off cliffs. I think it's very smart. It's introducing a whole new generation, I think, to turn-based strategy. And I actually have a confession. I think the first turn-based strategy game I played was actually on a console, because I'm thinking about this now. And it was Buck Rogers on the Genesis.
Like on Planet Zoom or something like that?
Yeah, it was like from 1992. I think it was Buck Rogers on the Genesis, which was a really horrible turn-based game. But that was the first time I played it, and I got hooked. I mean, it was graphically disgusting. Sound was all over the place. But I think if anybody has even the most passing interest, dropping $15 for Skulls of the Shogun could really sort of like open people's experiences up to a whole new world. Yeah,
and certainly, I talked this whole thing about it being simple, easy to pick up, but it's definitely not dumbed down or watered down.
And it's not combat puzzles either, right? Like you really can use your own tactics.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, hey, there's a choke point, guess you better, fortify that one spot. No, like there's a bunch of different approaches you could do, and I think the units are really cool. They're well designed, and they afford you a lot of, leeway in terms of improvising, coming up with strategies. It's really deep, and surprisingly so. And I don't think anyone's really going to be disappointed in it if they're looking for a really cool turn-based experience.
Can I ask you one last question for Fire Emblem?
You may.
So you can turn permadeath off, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they pussied out with that move, or do you think it's good?
I mean, it's an option. You don't have to use it if you don't want to.
Right.
And let's be okay. This is my opinion, but if you're playing Fire Emblem seriously, the Fire Emblem experience is you have permadeath on. However, there's a huge story element to Fire Emblem. And some people do want to see like that play out the relationships, because if certain characters die, you don't get to see things play out in the story. For the sake of just like having that complete experience, some people might just turn it on casual and play through it to see the story. But for newcomers, there's always been this argument whether Fire Emblem is just the bar is too high for it anyway, that no matter how far it goes down, there's certain people who just never get into it. I think they did the best job with this one in terms of making it accessible and easier for newcomers to get in. I mean, casual mode, it doesn't. You still, I mean, characters still die in battle. They can just come back to the next map. So you do lose them. It still doesn't make it any easier in the actual mission you're in to an extent. But I think it's a good decision to put in there. But let's face it, you still, there are those people, like just like in XCOM with your, like, how frustrating it is to lose, like, the person you put, that member you put.
Soldier,
it's the same thing. It's that draw. Like people, and they have like, what is it, the Iron Man mode in that game? Like they put those modes in there because they know there are those players who want that experience. That is why you play those types of games. And all that's still in Fire Emblem. As much as they didn't water it down, just like you said with Skulls of the Shogun, they didn't water anything down. They just threw more out there so that you could like tailor the experience to kind of lower the bar if you wanted to, so that you can at least enjoy it and learn it. Yeah. You learn it, and then you go into higher difficulties, you work your way up the ladder. And I think that's what this new Fire Emblem does so well.
Okay. Yeah, if you like Iron Man mode, you're a friggin' sadist, in my opinion. Okay, that's our show for this week. We'll be back next week, and I'm sure we will be talking about Dead Space 3 in some way, shape, or form, and a bunch of other stuff. Thank you for tuning in. Follow everybody on Twitter. Follow Invisible Walls on Twitter. And don't forget, Annoyed Gamers moving to Saturday. Tomorrow, you can get another dose of me. And in fact, you get a third dose of me on Sunday. I'm owning GT this weekend.
Are you on bonus
because
round?
I'm on bonus round.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, if numbers go down this weekend, we know whose problem it is.
The Welsh.
Yes. Laters.
See this and other GT shows and game reviews on the GT Originals iOS app, available now on the App Store.